Okay, I think we are finally live. Welcome, everybody. Transcending gender in our esoteric and magical practices is a topic that I've wanted to discuss for about a year now on the show. Actually, maybe closer to 2 years. And I think we live in such an extraordinary time when the esoteric community, including practitioners of the craft and folk magic and indigenous spiritual traditions, are really beginning to talk about and examine the need to transcend gender, to transcend sexual orientation and all of the other artificial constructs like race and nationalism and things like that, and begin working toward a more just, more holistic, ethical worldview and a way of moving in our practice and moving in the world. And so I'm really excited because tonight's show is going to include a panel of LGBTQ practitioners who are dedicated to helping us begin that discussion at a local level, a community level, national and international level, so that we can begin to see some transformation take place. More on that when we get back. So grab a cup of coffee, tea, get ready to read, get ready to join the discussion by typing in your questions and your comments when the Brew season 4 begins in about 60 seconds. And then this is where it takes me a second to get coordinated enough to pull up our countdown. And welcome back, everybody. For those who don't know me, I'm John Michael Salvato. I have the privilege of being your host for this incredible group of folks that we've got with us in the room tonight. And so we're just going to start off because I think one of the most horrifically boring things to do is to listen to my voice read other people's bios when we would much rather hear from the folks that are with us tonight themselves. So in no particular order, the order that the platform threw everybody up on the screen, I'm going to go ahead and go around the room, and we'll start off by just hearing from each of you about your stories, about your what brought you to the esoteric tradition that you practice. What is that practice? And then we'll get into some more of the more granular discussion. But for folks that are watching, remember, you can comment and ask questions throughout the entire show. All that we ask that you do, first of all, if you're in the private Facebook group, click that little link, streamyard.com/Facebook, to give permissions so that we can show your comments on the screen. And then keep your comments brief, because if you're like me and you're challenged by Twitter and can't keep comments down to a minimum, it takes up the entire page when you send us an entire paragraph. So Aaron, let's go ahead and get started with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Also, if each of you would, so that folks are familiar, let us know your pronouns when you introduce yourself as well. Tell us where you're from. Tell us about your path.
Well, my name is Aaron Mazza. My pronouns are they, them. I currently live in St. Louis, Missouri with my partner. And I got started on the path of witchcraft 13 years ago after I left seminary, coming to the realization that things weren't as they seem. I've started off in magic studying various forms of folk magic. I grew up around a lot of it back home, and primarily Latin magic and Caribbean magic is something that I've observed and became pretty well acquainted with, as some of my best friends are from the various nations where those traditions originated. I I read Lenormand. I specialize a lot in divination, and I do lots of lives with Lenormand cards. I'm working on my own podcast that is forthcoming, and I think that's really all I have.
Well, that's a good starting point, and we'll look forward to hearing a little bit more about some of those things and how they come into play in your practice. Continuing on the screen, I don't know if everybody sees the screen the same way I do, but on my screen next is Michael Herkis, who I promised I would not say looks better in a caftan than I will ever look, but it is true. So, Michael
Hi,
Herkis,
everyone.
the glam witch. Let's take it away with your story.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on tonight. I'm really honored to be here. I've been practicing witchcraft for just over 20 years at this point. I got into it around 11, 12 years old when I was coming into myself, trying to figure out who I was, being made fun of all the time for being more of an effeminate gay person at the time. I guess I didn't realize it at the time. I came out of the broom closet before I came out of the rainbow closet. But I I got into witchcraft from the glamorization of it in Hollywood during the 90s, the television shows, all of those different things. I was trying to find empowerment within myself, and came to this practice because it was more feminine based. There was a goddess, and I thought that was something that I found very appealing, because even though I do use the pronouns he, him, I'm much more femme, and I just really identified with that and felt a strong calling to Lilith, who I am a devotee of. And I'd say in the last 5 years or so, I've become a writer. I've written a lot for Which Way magazine. I'm the author of 5 books, working on a couple more at this point. And I'm just excited to be here and chat about the community and how we can grow and go from there.
Right on. Well, we're so thrilled to have you here. I got to tell you, this is a lineup that I've been like chomping at the bit to get together. There were a couple other people who wanted to be with us. They couldn't get here at the last minute. Something came up, but we're delighted to have you here. Gia, let's go ahead and bring you on. Tell us a little bit about your background and your pronouns and your journey and the tradition that you practice.
Hi guys, Gia Riley Flame. I am she, her. Been transitioning now for the past 5 years. I grew up in North Carolina, so I do a lot of folk magic. And that was thanks to my grandmother with home remedies and doing roots and herbs. And as a child, I was always interested in the occult, strange things, reading ghost stories. So it always interested me. So then I started junior high, 7th grade. I met my best friend, Angela. God rest her soul. She's gone now. We missed her so much. She's been gone about 2 weeks, but she got me into paganism, and we just studied together, and I learned and I grew something into it, and it helped me feel more comfortable with my feminine side, and I like helping people and listening to people and being an empath. Sometimes it's hard, but that's the way of life. You just have to learn how to deal with it. And since I've transitioned, I've embraced my magic a little bit more since I was so feminine. It sort of helped me turn that key from not knowing really what to do to sort of balancing everything out now.
Wow, you guys are giving me so much for us to discuss. It's going to be a challenge to keep this within that 45-minute to an hour range. But thank you. We're so glad that you're here. And back on the show is Cassandra Snow, who they were with us. Was it during the pandemic or right before the pandemic?
I think that it was probably during the pandemic, because it was probably promoting my second book, because I don't think I knew you during Queering the Tarot. And I definitely had a pandemic book baby. which was my second
tell
one.
Tell us a little more for those who didn't catch that show. Tell us about your background and everything as well.
Yeah, I'm Cassandra, they, them pronouns. I came into witchcraft actually via way of tarot. Tarot was first for me. I grew up largely in the Bible Belt, and my freshman year of college, I had some really horrific things happen to me. Some things you'd probably expect hearing that, and then just some other things I don't think I could explain if we had 7 hours. But I was really looking for answers outside of what I was being taught in the church and through sort of what is considered the traditions of the South. And someone handed me a tarot deck as a joke, and I started working with that. And then it was through that I started thinking, like, well, if this has been so great and so helpful to me, what else is out there? Because that was my line of questioning. My practice is actually extremely eclectic. I have, living in Appalachia, I certainly studied folk magic with people there. There was I was outside of Asheville, North Carolina, and there's a pretty big Wiccan coven there that I went to a lot of classes and stuff with. And then as I aged, I started studying, occultism, all different kinds of magic, getting in touch with family about a lot of our Irish and Scottish and Welsh roots, and realizing that maybe I'm not actually the first person in the family to explore these things. So that's been fun to get back to. So yeah, it's pretty eclectic. I've kind of studied as much as I can in the 18 years I've been doing it.
Right on. Well, we're thrilled to have you back. And so again, just reminding everybody out there that's watching, this is your show too. So if you have any questions, ask those questions. I will try to keep an eye on the comments so that aside from everybody, feel free, if you're watching, go ahead and drop a comment. Let us know where you're watching from. But if you have specific questions, they'll be the ones that we put up on the screen. So what I'd like to do is dive in right now so that we make the most of every minute. See, I told you guys I sucked at multitasking. That is not the right battery. Here we go.
You're doing great.
I think that the next question that I really want to hear from all of you is, I guess I was supposed to tell a little bit about myself too. I think most of the folks watching the show know me a little bit better, as an author, as a teacher. But my journey outside of the craft and just in my personal life has involved a lifelong struggle of like falling through the cracks, because I'm older than probably all of these folks here put together. We didn't have the vocabulary when I was younger, and so if you're non-binary, even within our own community, there were people who were trying to say, well, you have to make a decision. And I was a drag performer as well. I'm a drag performer as well. So they said, well, so then you want to be a girl? Well, no, I'm not a girl, and I'm not a boy. I'm John Michael. I am something other, and I'm okay with that. And like I'm okay with the parts most of the time that I came with, not all of the time. And so as I grew up in an Italian folk magic tradition that was multi-generational, and that doesn't mean, for those who might be new to esotericism, that didn't mean I got any perks. I didn't inherit magic. I didn't have any skills that were passed down from grandma. I'm not one of the grandsons of the witches that they failed to burn. I don't know if my eye roll was clear enough there, but it was intended. But I started to realize that in the mainstream pop culture, American and British traditions, I was seeing a lot of my friends who outside of the craft might have been a little more quiet about their gender struggles and their sexual orientation struggles. But we were within the craft, there was a safe space, and we were openly discussing how there were things about certain traditions where we didn't fit in. where where gender was strictly defined in binary terms, and so traditions and rituals were binary. And so what I want to hear from our guests today, I'm just going to use that as kind of the segue into that first question. How does your queer identity inform your magical practice, and has that presented challenges? And we're not just going to do the go around the room. Anybody who wants to tackle that first question, go ahead and jump in.
I feel like it has informed my magical practice as it has made my magical practice made me comfortable to come out as non-binary. And because I would always just sit there in silence during rituals and stuff like that, whenever they would say like male pronouns, like the god or even the goddess. And then just like you, I always ran into having to make a choice, like, are you a boy or a girl? I was like, well, why can't I just be neither? Or why can't I just be a combination of both? So my magical tradition helped me be more comfortable as I go about my mundane life. Okay. And it's also, I feel like my tradition has become more enriched because I've started living my truth. And it helped me come to the realization I don't owe anybody masculinity, and I don't owe anybody femininity either. I owe myself me. And so that makes for some pretty potent magic, in my opinion.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, with me, I think that growing up with grandparents who were Cherokee, my father's half Cherokee, they believe in two spirits. And to see them sometimes being judgmental against people who were different or gay or trans, it's like, okay, well, if you guys had members of your family who were doing this, why can't I be that way? And for me, as soon as I started transitioning, that door and window just opened up. And I said, you know what? I could care less what anybody says anymore, because now I'm comfortable with me. I'm happy with me. Mm-hmm. And it's brought the magic out to blossom a little bit more. It took a few years, but I'm so glad that I did it.
Yes, I'm a little kind of the same way with that, with the blossoming and coming into your fold. Yeah. As I mentioned before, I'm a devotee of the goddess Lilith, who, if anyone's familiar with her, knows that it's primal femininity. And so that, of course, was definitely a challenge over time, dealing with specifically like more Dianic practices or turf situations in the witchcraft and magical community. And it still is a situation now where it's, I'm so much more in line with femininity and dealing with that and coming up with the goddess within. But there's still groups and things that I can't be a part of. Even last week, there was one that I was rejected from because I am a born male. And at the same time, because I also don't really identify with more of the masculinity and the gods, I also get kicked out from a lot of the gay male groups and have friction with a couple of male authors and different things like that. But at the same time, when I came out kind of more in the public world as a witch and became an author and started writing and doing that, I developed this glamour of the glam witch. And I kind of missed speaking a little bit more about my practice earlier, that I really work a lot with glamour magic, fashion, makeup, aesthetic to fuel magic and to feel comfortable and do self-expression. And creating this persona of the glam witch to help teach and tell other people kind of how to do that, I've really blossomed into my more non-binary identity that I embrace at this point, wearing a lot more high heels and caftans and dresses and flowy outfits and things like that. So kind of what has already been echoed too, it's helped me kind of transcend more even to the mundane world, because I do that now at work too, and I'm in a corporate law firm environment, and I would never dream about doing that years ago, but it's really helped me come into my own power.
Right on. I'm just
I
picturing you walk into a courtroom. Yeah. I'm just picturing Michael walk into a courtroom a la Legally Blonde and slaying that fucking courtroom.
I would love that.
Yeah. Oh, I love being here. I love hearing everyone's stories so much. Mine are really my queer identities and my magic are really intrinsically linked. I also came out of the broom closet before I came out of the rainbow closet, but barely. It was sort of like a race to the finish line, what was going to happen
Same.
first. And then
I feel you.
I kind of tripped, fell. Yeah, well, and I sort of like, I don't know, that's a whole other thing. But it's no secret if you read any of my books or heard me speak about my experiences is at my first college at all, but I am definitively not a fan. I will say one thing that place taught me that I think it had to teach me. It's like a survivor skill of take what works for you and leave the rest. And I think that just sort of became my MO when I started getting into magic and things like that. Like, even for all of my feelings, I still have good memories that I can look fondly on because I took what I could use and left the rest. But yeah, that really is how I sort of informed my magical practice as well. I've also always been just an avid reader. But because I grew up knowing that I was pretty much exclusively into women, and then when I came out as gay, I was never really in the closet as non-binary, but that language is really new, and I think we forget that. And so I only knew that I didn't like to be called anyone's girlfriend, even when I was like head over heels in love with someone, and I needed to be partner, or even I preferred boyfriend. And so once there started being language for that, it was a lot easier. But yeah, I think the biggest thing in terms of queer identity is because of those experiences, because of where I grew up, and because I grew up with a fairly sex positive but very straight mom. It's always been about taking what I need and leaving the rest and learning how to adapt that. And then still I was reading and experiencing, and like I said before I even started talking about me, I love hearing other people's stories so much. And that's always been true. And so for me, it's always just been a game of synthesis and incorporation into something that looks unique, but really I could name where almost all of it came from and the other stuff I left to get there.
Right on. I want to kind of take off from something, a kind of a common theme that everybody touched on a little bit, but I think that just from looking at some of the comments, most of the comments are not specific to our topic. So so there are some thoughtful comments about you know, some brief asking for brief history of Lilith. I will allow, you know, ask our guests after the show if they feel inclined to answer some of those questions. Somebody else asking if they could be straight and practice magic. When I see questions like that, absolutely, yes, you can. But I don't know, you know, in situations where it's somebody coming from outside the Facebook group, we never know if we're being trolled or not. So hopefully you're serious in that question. But if you have some specific questions for our guests about around this topic, or you want to share your story about you know, what your challenges have been, and what your realizations, what was the sort of the catalyst that helped inform your magical practice through your identity, please feel free to share those. And then I'll just ask our guests as our next question before our break. I can't believe we're almost at a half an hour. What when we talk about the challenges that we've experienced, and you know, certainly this is a more resilient group of people than the general public, and that's one of the reasons we do this, is to let you know you're not alone. If you're watching this and you're feeling like you're slipping through the cracks, you're feeling like you don't fit in, or you've been told by groups like Michael said, and I just had that happen this week as well. Someone telling me, well, if we misunderstood and we thought that when you said that you were trans, we thought that meant that you were transitioning. And as a little bit of a humorous side story from that, I attended a local meeting, local gathering and dinner with a group of folks from our community here. And the joke at the table was that the new folks who didn't know me spent their entire dinner trying to figure out if I was a trans male or a trans female, because they knew that everybody at the table was trans or married to a person who was trans. They knew my husband, because his sister was there at the table, and so we were just whispering on my side of the table, and I said, I'm gonna, because I do love pushing people's buttons. I said, watch, I'm gonna stand up in a minute, and so on the other side of the table is going to check out my crotch, because she was going nuts trying to figure out, is this a boy or a girl? And it started. The next question was how do we, if we're coming together as a community, and there are people out there who just can't get their arms around the fact that there's not always a binary answer to a question. Then my question for everybody here is, what was the greatest challenge you've had to overcome as an LGBTQ esoteric practitioner? For me, being, like I just had cataract surgery, and Michael and I were talking right before the show how I'm not allowed to put eye makeup on or eyelashes or anything for the first 2 weeks after the last surgery, after the second eye. And that's been annoying enough in everyday life. And then I'm less than a week out. And I may or may not have cheated a little bit tonight. But
girl, when you gotta have the makeup.
It just really made me think while I was sitting in there saying, okay, so I can do a little bit, but I'm not, I do, I'm loving that I can see 2020 for the first time since I was 5. So I don't want to mess that up. And it made me realize that even within me, within myself, while we have all these great intentions of helping raise awareness and everything else, I was finding that I needed to be and look a certain way. Now, a bunch of my students wanted to see the drag personality, which they don't understand as a character that I play. Angelina Serafina Tutacosa is not me. It's not. There's. I'm sure there are parts of me that inform her character, but she's a character. And Dora Flame is another character I do. And there's a crackhead street witch that I do that is just like represents all the crazy in all of us. She's a character I do like that. Those
we need to see her. We need to see her
as soon as those 2 weeks are over, because she takes a little bit of extra work. But yeah, she's like a cross between a Karen and a New Ager, and like if you've ever watched Saturday Night Live, the woman that comes on, she comes on the Weekend Update, and she's like in a ratty sweater and always talking about getting kicked out of like Wendy's. That's inspiration for this character. But I want to know what you guys. So I dealt with that challenge, that I was feeling like it was not enough for me to just show up on the screen, looking as raggedy as I'm feeling right now with some health challenges going on, because that wasn't representative enough of who I am. And the simple fact is, when I get up out of bed in the morning or I get out of the shower, I'm every bit as much a non-binary person as when I look fabulous or flawless. Not that that's happened in years, but the potential is there.
Yeah.
What are the challenges you guys have to overcome, as queer practitioners?
Oh my God. Let me tell me. It's the fact that I have to feel that I need to wear the makeup every day for people to accept me for who I am. Mm-hmm. If I don't have the makeup on to go out in public, now if I'm home, I'm fine. No makeup, t-shirt, sweatpants. But I feel that to me, to be a complete trans woman to the public, then I have to present myself in a certain way. If not, people are going to go, oh, well, you're not trans, then you're just playing a game. That's one of the problems I have, and it bothers me, but it's crazy.
How do you overcome that?
Well, I'm dating someone. We've been together almost 2 years. For the first 6 months, he wouldn't see me without hair, without makeup. And I just happened to get sick one weekend. He goes, look, I don't care. So I washed the makeup totally off. I sat there with no hair on. and t-shirt and sweatpants, and I was just like, this is me. And that's helped me get out of it a little bit. And there's some days I just put a little foundation on, eyebrows. I'm like, okay, now today I can go out. You know, it took a bit to say, you don't always have to be feminine and wear makeup. You can still be feminine and be who you are, and it doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was rough, but I learned
really
to say,
identify
hey,
with
forget
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I identify with both of those things too, but I think from almost the opposite perspective of someone who is AFAB and does love makeup but is non-binary. And then I also have like societal expectations of like what good skin for an AFAB person is and like all of these things. And I feel like I'm constantly having to decide between, do I want people today to see me as non-binary or see me as attractive? And that's like really painful. And it's not necessarily, and it's not necessarily exclusive to esoteric community, but it does show up there. I think my biggest challenge in terms of esoteric community kind of goes back to what I said earlier about how I will read a lot, listen to people's stories, work to sort of synthesize something. While that is a skill of mine and it is something I'm proud that I do well, it's exhausting, and having to constantly look for resources that don't exist, or that my degree is in theater and we spent so many semesters like tearing apart subtext in works. And so then to do that in like metaphysical text and go in and say something based on that, and everyone's like, oh, no, that's not a thing. When so much has been straight washed over time, so much has been just flat out erased, taken out. And I literally have the training to recognize that. And then I'm shot down in those spaces a lot of those times and being told, no, that's not a thing. Or like, oh, well, that's like a lot of the reaction to it. And so I think just like the being shot down of something that I know is right, which I also think is somewhat of a femme issue as well. But also just being LGBTQ plus in these spaces. And I would say even being social justice oriented in terms of like race and disability and stuff in those spaces. I think that piece has been really hard. And then the flip side of that is it's also just really exhausting to have to search to find yourself, instead of just like picking up any book and there's your magic, you know. It's just really hard, and I'm finally getting very tired of it after 18 years. I think I probably started getting tired at 15 years and wouldn't admit it. So now I'm just like, no.
Well,
no more.
Girl, much love, baby girl.
If I can just tell you that watching your journey and having the privilege of like following you on several of your social media streams, there isn't a single fucking time that you are not beautiful. So don't ever worry whether you have to be non-binary or beautiful. You are absolutely one of the most beautiful people on the planet. And I think that a lot of that comes from that realness, that wholeness that says, this is me. And there are some parts of me that I'm having a hard time with today. And maybe I'll have a hard time with them again tomorrow. But you get the whole package. And I think that's what makes you so beautiful. Is it doesn't, I mean, I'm touched and my heart is with you, that like so many of us, you go through days when you feel like, am I going to be non-binary or beautiful? But I felt the need to just let you know that even though without invalidating those feelings, you're beautiful, period.
I will say, Cassandra, that your book, I think it's Queering Your Craft, if memory serves me correctly. And that was definitely one of the eye-openers and like an inspiring stepping stone for me to finally come out and
thank you.
And just be myself for my magical community and just for my family. My mom's still coming around, but you know what? She will eventually.
Yeah.
But I will touch back on
Y'all
what
are going to make me cry tonight.
I will touch back on what Michael said. There was one time when like it was at a certain gathering where I ran into a particular group who honored Norse traditions, and I was told that I couldn't work with the Norse pantheon because I am non-binary and because of who I love. They said that basically made me feel like I was not right for that pantheon because I was not heterosexual and all that other stuff. And so
Did they ever meet Odin?
Apparently they didn't. Apparently they did not.
Also, my best friend who like lives upstairs, who I'm co-writing a project with right now, is a non-binary Norse practitioner, and like they would absolutely have had something to say that like and they like know their stuff more than almost anyone I know. So
it's kind of because my great grandmother, her last name was Sorensen. And so I've always had the interest to go in and study those traditions, but I've always, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, I've always felt sort of chased away from those circles.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, I've already kind of talked about that a little bit, but I will say, I think one of the ways that I've kind of overcome it and being kind of locked out and pushed away from those groups is just putting myself out there to then, create kind of the comfort zone that I was looking for other people. So that's been really helpful to me. And then also, not closing the door on anybody else, being open to any of those different things and leading by example in that way. And maybe one day we'll set in for those individuals. But another challenge that I had has been kind of expectations from other people within the LGBTQ plus community on how I should identify. And that it's not like it's in a process, right? Like I'm continuously blooming, and every year there's a new petal that unfolds, and it's a process. It's not an event. So I can totally see myself going into bigger and crazier directions, as I continue to evolve. But it has been challenging. I've had a couple of comments and kind of negative conversations with individuals who expect me to be more or to fully transition or different things like that. Just like, why? Like,
I look at it this way. Our journeys are kind of like facets, like you said, a flower. And some of the most beautiful diamonds have the most facets. And each time the light hits them, you're always discovering a new dimension of that particular stone. And Absolutely. So that's how I explain it to people. And if you're not evolving and transforming, you're probably stagnant, dead, or dying.
Definitely.
Yeah. I love it. And even what Cassandra said earlier too, I think, about, non-binary, it's new. It's a new term that we're using. It's still evolving. We're still figuring it out as we go. But I definitely think having conversations and stuff like this is helpful in figuring it out.
Yeah, I was recently on a podcast with a delightful, amazing little brother of mine, Drew, whose podcast is called Transforming with Drew, and we were having the conversation, and in real time, I was talking about how what it means to be non-binary, and how while that may be who I've been since I was born. We didn't have the vocabulary for it. And now just kind of really getting some of the vocabulary, and some of the younger people like telling me even more parts of the vocabulary that for me right now just doesn't really work, or I'm not really totally comfortable with it. As we're talking, I started to ask questions of myself, and we were kind of stream of consciousness talking, and I was like, I am just realizing right now that I've always referred to myself as gay, but that's out of the habit of the era that I grew up in. But being non-binary, does that mean then when I dated trans men, that was I really straight, or was I bi, or was I something else, or pan, or what? And that's where I think it gets tricky on one end. When we come back from our public service announcement, I want to kind of flip the table a little bit, where we've talked about, and I think have hopefully inspired some folks about the potential that exists for us to move beyond our challenges. Now, when we come back from the break, I want to talk about and hear from each of you what you see the opportunities that we represent to the greater community, to the larger esoteric community, because of who we are. So I'll let you all think of that while my future ex-husband shares a message with us from the Charter for Compassion. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Adrian Grenier, and I'm a guy you might know. That's why I've chosen to speak to you today, because you know my story. Well, some of it anyway. But what if you knew everyone's story? What if everyone on the planet was familiar to everyone else? The Charter for Compassion wants to find out. They're asking you to tell them a piece of your story. One moment of compassion that changed your life. Each story will be inspiring in its own right, but all of them together will reveal a world of compassion happening right now in places all over the world, as diverse as Kentucky all the way to Pakistan and everywhere in between. Imagine it. Thousands of stories told one person at a time. Someone once said, there isn't anyone you couldn't learn to love once you've heard his or her story. Stories make us care. Stories help us understand. Stories breed compassion. And if there's one thing we need right now, in our politics, in our dialogue, in our communities, in our world, it's compassion. Go to charterforcompassion.org and tell your story. And while you're there, affirm the Charter and make a commitment to make the world a more compassionate place. But it's only the first step. Now it's time to practice. It's the only way to a peaceful world. I can't wait to hear your story.
And if you were distracted by how adorable he is, just watch a future episode. We'll have him on again. I mean, that way you can actually hear what he's saying. So welcome back. This installment of the Brew is focused on transcending gender and the experience of queer practitioners in the esoteric traditions and indigenous religions, spiritual traditions, and the craft as a whole. And so with me is an incredible panel of practitioners. And what I'd like to ask each of you is, we've talked about the trials and the obstacles that we've overcome, but I think there's another part of this that doesn't get talked about enough, and that is the positive impact that we can have as queer people, practitioners, on the larger metaphysical community. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you see opportunities there and changes, in fact, that are occurring within the community at large?
I see practitioners as ourselves. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to say that I definitely think so. If people want them, I definitely don't think that it needs to be the job of people who are marginalized to educate everyone else to an exhausting, overwhelming degree. But I definitely think we are presenting opportunities to take the materials we're putting out there and think critically about what gender and what sexuality mean to you, and think about how that can be useful for magical purpose. I think, I always think about every time I queer something, I end up on a journey of also sex positivity and accepting myself more and more. And so I think that opportunity is definitely there. If people want it, we are all putting out materials, and it is all meant to kind of help you open up. And then I think respectfully, most of us are also pretty willing to talk to people. There just comes a point.
Absolutely.
I feel like as queer practitioners, we're showing not just fellow queer practitioners, but we are helping people who are outside the LGBTQ community who practice magic, help them embrace themselves more, because we are the trailblazers for people to be able to move beyond gender, especially in magical circles in the metaphysical community. kind of like the struggle I ran into with like the Norse pantheon and stuff, because the
Go ahead.
gods and goddesses and the spirits are going to call whoever they're going to call, but they're not going to care about things like, do you call yourself a boy or a girl, or do you call because they really don't. And that's what I feel we're doing, is we're speaking for spirit whenever it comes to stuff like that's kind of a tongue twister. Speaking for spirit, and we are telling them that divinity is going to call and empower whoever, no matter what form they are.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's it, because I think too, when we present ourselves and we're putting ourselves forward and are helping educate and like just teaching people what we know, and if we don't know anything, someone else is teaching us. So we're turning and pushing that knowledge, and the more we educate, the more we embrace who we are and let all of those sides come together, it's going to be great. I mean, it's moving there and getting there, and I can see it. I know there are a lot of groups here and a couple of covens here that they do drum circles, and everyone is bi and gay and straight and trans, and they all get along, and that we need more of that to empower us, to keep us going.
Absolutely. I would say too, excuse me there. So one of the things that kind of really helped me in kind of figuring out, you know, where I am and who I am, and, you know, what makes me happy, and coming out as this non-binary queer person, was kind of like seeing it happen also in real time with society. So seeing like Billy Porter and Jonathan Van Ness and people really just kind of stepping into that identity. And so in the same way, you know, if anyone's kind of looked at my Instagram or social media pages, you see that I'm constantly going out and I'm representing that. I'm representing the image that I'm comfortable in. And I've had so many people respond to me that that's been helpful for them to kind of see that, and that's inspiring to them. And just seeing someone else do it was really helpful for them to kind of move more in that direction. So that's kind of been my way of navigating that.
And I have to say,
I also think too.
Go ahead, Cassandra.
Oh, I was gonna say I had one more thing to add too, which was I think I had talked about gender and sexuality and like how powerful and strong that knowing yourself, even if you are a straight cis person, can be, and pulling that into your magic, how great that is. I also want to say a lot of the groups that we've talked about that are exclusionary, that are getting so caught up in gender and stuff, the flip side of what I said is that is extremely limiting. And imagine how expansive and how many more words you can just have and use and utilize for your craft if you're not getting super caught up on what other people are or who other people are. Instead of talking about are you male or female, they could be talking about, well, how do you utilize your creativity? How do you take action? How do you whatever? And that's going to be so much stronger for your magic. And I do think that the more we have these conversations, the more it opens up the gate for those like actually very like transcendental conversations, no pun intended, to be happening.
I was going to just say the same thing that you just wrapped up with, Cassandra, is that, you know, I think what really matters. That's all right. That's all right, because it sounded much better coming from you. It sounded, it really resonates with me in hearing all of your stories, that the opportunity is an opportunity of service. It's an opportunity of witness. It's an opportunity of authenticity. And in the Inner Alchemy Mystery School, where I have the privilege of working with a group of faculty, where this is a topic that comes up quite often. There was a small breakout group today that we were talking about Billy Porter and Lil Nas X, and I said, you know, you watch, and I don't mean to embarrass them in any way, but I said, you watch one day when we're having this conversation in the future, Michael Herkis is going to be in that group of people who were trailblazing, who said, this is who I am. like it or don't like it, that's your business. That's none of my business. I don't give a shit. And that in no small way has inspired me, has excited me for the potential for the next generation. Because let's face it, when you're my age, we've survived, I've survived the crap. But I'm so grateful that the younger generation is not going to have to deal with some of that, because now we have vocabulary. We have people who are willing to push the envelope. We have that. I don't think that 10 years from now, people are going to confuse those of us who perform in drag with non-binary, because not every drag performer is non-binary. Not every drag performer is even trans. And so in the magical community, having someone who could be as absolutely literally magical as we see Michael and we see Aaron and we see Cassandra and Gia in their everyday lives, that witness in no small way will go a long way, I think, to inspiring the next generation and even your contemporaries and the older folks in the community. So as we wrap up, we're at 10 minutes before the hour. I would like to give each of you, I think we lost Gia for a moment, give each of you an opportunity to talk about, here she comes, to talk about what's next, what is happening. We'll start with Aaron, and this one will actually go around the room. Tell us about any projects you have going on. It'll give me an opportunity to put your contact information on the screen for those folks who are, wanting to be able to continue this conversation and ask questions of you. Do you have any books in the works? And like I said, your contact information will be up there so that people can get in touch. But Aaron, I know you got a lot of good stuff going on your live streams. So tell us what's going on with you. What's next? What can we expect from you?
Right now, I'm working on my first episode of a podcast called The Witching Hour. And I'm also working a lot with people, just doing readings for people and making people more comfortable in their skin. And I plan on teaching a class and doing a blog over just Lenormand. Lenormand is my passion. That's my system, and I do divinations. So I really hope to make that available for more people and to make the system more well known.
Right on. I'll look forward to that. Michael, what's going on with you? There's a new book coming, right?
Yes, I'm always writing books. I'm actively writing 2 books at once right now. It's just really crazy, and I can't really talk about them one I can talk a little bit about, and it's really going to be a really lovely kind of photo book on becoming the glam witch, stepping into glamour, and all of the different things that I do and how I can put on presentation. I'm talking to another author about a potential co-writing experience as well. And then in the very, very early stages of looking into developing a magical caftan line and makeup line.
Right on. Especially since some of our favorite producers have stopped producing.
Yes. Yes.
So, good. Fill that void in the marketplace. Gia, what's new? What can we expect from you? What's going on in your world?
Well, as you see my tag handle now, Gabbing with Gigi, I have just started working on a new YouTube page to go live. What I want to do is just get out, be like some of the other girls, do a full makeup session. But as I'm doing that makeup session, have different questions on topics like we're doing tonight, have topics on children who've been kicked out of their homes, just do different things within the community just to get everybody's opinion, to see where we're going, to start something where I can have a positive atmosphere and get people listening to one another, learning again, just having those experiences to show that, hey, we're all here for each other. We all don't have to sit in different places and be apart and not have a friend and not have anybody there for you.
I love that. I love that so many of us are taking high tech and making it high touch. In a world that's emerging from a really brutal pandemic isolationism. Cassandra, what can we look forward to with you?
Yeah, I think probably what most people are going to be the most excited about. I do have a third book slated coming out in fall of 2022. I am co-writing it with Siri Vincent Pluff of They Are Northern Lights Witch on most social media. They have an apothecary, and they also run the Heathen's Journey podcast. And this will be another tarot book, although there's a fair amount of ritual in it as well. And it's about utilizing tarot for creativity, and also sort of, we're a little bit on our high horses about how everyone thinks that you have to be a creative person full time or you don't, but we are sort of positing that it is a really important form of self-care and sort of like holistically taking care of yourself that everyone should be doing. And it's really fun to co-write a book. It's like half as stressful. That doesn't mean it's not stressful, but it's definitely half as stressful. And so that is really fun and exciting. That will also be out through Wiser. I love working with them. And then I'm always teaching tarot classes. I have one for total newbies like in 2 weeks, I think, or like a week from Tuesday. And then, if you follow me online at Tarot Cassandra or at CassandraSnow.com, which I think has come up, it's there's a hyphen. Cassandra Snow, no hyphen, had taken it before I got there. And so, that's where you can kind of find out what is going on, grab seats in classes. I'm mostly doing tarot classes right now by request. If I think I have the audience, I do some witchcraft classes as well. My style is so eclectic that I sometimes struggle with that. But, and then, where was I going with? Oh yeah, I am an active reader, and so following me online also shows how you can get a tarot reading. I am usually booked out several weeks in advance, so if it is time sensitive, I'm probably not the reader for you. But otherwise, hit me up.
All right. Well, there is so much to look forward to. And when those of you that have books coming out, give me a holler when you're ready to talk about those on the show. We will make time on a separate show specifically to talk about your book. Speaking of which, we've got some of those author friends of the show that are coming up in the next couple weeks. Including Chris Allen's new book that we'll be talking about in a couple weeks, and what's going on for me and for my intentional community is that on the 30th of October, which is a Saturday, the day before Halloween, we are having our Practical Magic 2021 celebration. It'll be a day-long event from 11 in the morning till 6 at night Eastern time. That will feature, I think we have 10 or 11 practitioners, faculty members, and other folks who will be each doing a 30-minute segment throughout the day with 15-minute breakouts in between that. So it promises to be really exciting, covering everything from Appalachian folk magic to the Afro-Indigenous traditions, Italian folk magic, plant magic, working with essential oils and other metaphysical tools. I mean, just to name just a few, Catholic conjure. There is such an incredible array of classes that are scheduled. On the bottom of your screen is the information. You could either go to inneralchemy.online/event. Although Facebook keeps making that link stop working for some reason, you can actually find the link all over my page. And at the end of our broadcast today, I think we talked a little bit about how you can connect with the Inner Alchemy Mystery School. So I want to thank. We are 1 minute. I can't believe I actually stayed on time. 1 minute before the hour. I want to thank Aaron and Michael and Gia and Cassandra so much for making this broadcast tonight everything I could have imagined it to be. We could probably go on for another hour with all the questions, the comments. If each of you guests, please read the comments. Some folks were a little longer winded in their comments, so it's worth taking the time to check them out. Folks love you as do I, and we're grateful to have each of you here. I'm going to slowly be putting, let's see if I can walk and chew gum at the same time. I'm going to put all of you in the green room where I will catch up with you in a minute. But thank you so much for making this an incredible
Thank you.
hour.
Thank you.
And
Thank
and for
you.
folks who are watching,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mwah.
thank you as well for, let's see if I can do, I see I can't talk and chew gum at the same time. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. Keep the questions coming. Our guests will have an opportunity to check out the feed afterwards, and be sure to share this with folks that you know who might be interested in what we're doing. And as we say at the end of every one of our broadcasts, we encourage you to stay in the moment, because that's where the power is, to fill that moment with gratitude, fill that moment with celebration and acceptance of who and what you are. Know that you are loved and appreciated by the show, but that you're loved and appreciated by folks you can't even begin to imagine whose lives you touch. And until next broadcast, I just want to remind you that the best is yet to come. We'll talk to each of you soon.